Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. It's our second episode, and we're going to continue talking about BIM coordination. I'm Stephen Bissett.
AP Persavage, and Stephen and myself are both technical specialists in the AEC space, so tackle a lot of customer questions on a day-to-day basis. And that's kind of what we're going to go into today. Just provide a format that we can just kind of speak directly to some of the things that we hear often, just convey that information directly back to the customers.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we get a lot of questions from colleagues and customers and our partners, and we wanted to take the opportunity to provide the answers that we found via our experience, our research, and our coordination with colleagues. One of the biggest questions I've been getting, and I know you've been getting them a lot, is how to get your information from Navisworks into field.
Right. So a lot of our customers on a day-to-day basis are interested in setting up, a lot of in-depth Navisworks users interested in setting up search sets, selection sets, and then be able to fully leverage it throughout our BIM 360 ecosystem. So in BIM 360 field, typically it's all relating back to equipment mapping, property mapping. So really that's what we're going to go through today, is exactly the step-by-step of how to get that selection set into field throughout the entire ecosystem.
And one of the other questions I get, I know that you've helped with as well, is there is a decent size of confusion between Glue and Navisworks. And when I look at Navisworks, I look at it as a tool, the appropriate tool for the appropriate worker, and that is for the VDC, the BIM manager, the individual that's doing the heavy lifting for all of the clash detection and whatnot. And when in that instance, and forgive me for saying this, and I might get a little pinned for it, but when you're using Navisworks, BIM 360 Glue becomes more of a very hyperactive FTP site that has a lot more functionality.
In certain use cases, definitely, right? BIM 360 Glue enables a lot of different processes, whether it be model coordination, but again, conveying of information at times through a project team. So you can always do standard file shares and Revit models, or like the example we're going to show today, actually an NWC file to actually carry on the flow of whatever type of work you're trying to do.
Absolutely. Now, one of the questions, one of many questions is, why would you want to bring your stuff into field? What does bringing your selection sets and equipment sets, and we can talk about that a little more in a few seconds here, but what benefit would that bring into when you're using something like BIM 360 Field?
Well, ultimately what we're trying to do is commission out equipment, right? And if you can group pieces of equipment in a model setting to a specific set of equipment that have similar properties, you can then leverage and make that equipment property mapping in field that much easier. So it's basically grouping of information.
Exactly, so then you can go through commissioning and understand where these structures, objects, equipment, using the same term that was already used, when they're placed, what they are, so that actually helps with operation and maintenance down the line.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that we'll show right now is we'll go ahead and show what you can do in Navisworks. So let's take a look at
SwitchGears.
Navisworks here.
All right, so at this point, right, I'm just in Navisworks 2017. I think I'm in actually the BIM 360 ready version of this, but nonetheless, typically at this point, our customers would be operating off just a local NWC file or NWD file. So I'm just going to pop one open very quickly. I'm just going File Open, know where my file is, basically just opening up this field integration test. And this is just the data set that we've kind of created to walk through this flow. So when I pop open the model, right, standard data set here for the medical center. If anybody has seen Autodesk demos in the past, you probably recognize this model.
Use it a lot.
Absolutely. But nonetheless, the idea here is that I've already set up some search sets within Navisworks, right? They're all available to me on the left-hand side through my search sets. If I wanted to create new ones, let me pop back into that. Switch to a new one. If I wanted to create new ones, right, it's as easy as going to Find Items, basically selecting in, drag it off screen, basically selecting in on whatever type of category, property, and value. Basically finding it, it'll recognize all the different equipment that have that shared property, and I create that search set, basically through that same interface. But for the sake of example, right, all I want to do is share this to field. So how do I go about doing that? In my local file, all I want to do at this point is just do a standard file save as, okay? And I'm just saving back this NWD file. All my search sets have been now created. I'm good to share with field, so I'm just gonna save it.
So one of the confusions that come up is the difference between an NWC and an NWD.
Sure.
And typically, when you're using Revit and you're pushing models from Revit up into Glue, it creates an NWC file. This NWD actually contains all of that selection set data.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's really the critical piece to this, right? Is that the NWD actually carries through that search selection set. So I'm actually just going to close out of this model, and this is important because if I go into Glue and try to upload this file while I'm in Navisworks, it basically is going to just error me out and say, you got to close that file. So we'll just go ahead and exit it out and then access, whatever Glue project that we already created for this set, right? And for the sake of example, I'm already signed in, everything's good to go. Just in my main page dashboard here, and I'm just going to select in on this Science Medical Center. This is where we're going to interface in. Now, to share that NWD file is really as easy as just going down to the Models tab, selecting Upload Models. And since I'm working off a local NWD file, I just basically browsed exactly where that file is, select it, and hit Open. Actually, for the sake of example here, just to provide some differentiation, I'm just going to select 2 here and go ahead and open it. Oh, it's actually not going to let me. Never mind.
That never happens when you're live.
Live demos, right? I'm just, for the sake of example, since I've already pushed this, let's just cancel out.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to cancel out here as well because we've already uploaded it. The same steps we're going to go through is.
Now, one question that our audience might have right now is, what was that little spin wheel symbol? That orange spin wheel symbol that was on the side in the dashboard before.
Oh, right. So that basically what you're looking at, and forgive me guys, my screens are duplicated here, so I'm jumping off screen. This little symbol, right? This is what you're talking about? Yeah, so that's just the generic icon, right, for equipment sets located either in Navisworks or BIM 360 Glue. Actually, I think this icon's specific to Glue. But nonetheless, that's referencing any equipment set that I've previously created, and here we can see that I already have 2 set up in this exact project.
Now, before we move on to and how that can get pushed, what's the process of actually just creating an equipment set within Glue?
Yeah, right? So that's important to do as well. Obviously, the ability to create those search sets, we've kind of already gone through that. But basically, within BIM 360 Glue, no matter what object I'm keying in on, so let me orbit around my project here, actually get into a piece of mechanical equipment, basically just by right-clicking on any object, I can see the View Properties tab, or I can actually manually create this equipment set right from this interface.
Excellent.
So it makes it very accessible. But again, if I wanted to view properties, again, let me slide this guy over. Basically, any property value associated with this model or this specific equipment, I can then right-click again and group that equipment based on, again, any specific property.
So it seems like it's very important that when you're actually building out these BIM models, these 3D models of your structures, that the information is put in ahead of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that is going to cascade. So whatever you put in at the beginning in your quote-unquote foundational design will cascade throughout.
Absolutely.
Well, let's take a look at how we can push this into BIM 360 field.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just go ahead and create one more equipment set. When we actually make this push, it'll take a couple minutes, so we'll see if it actually goes through on screen with us, but nonetheless, we'll do that. Basically, by bridging the link between the equipment sets is, again, in that Models tab, just navigating over to the more actions, and I can see that I have Share with Field. Basically, just selecting that gives me a couple of verifications to go through. Do I want to share this model? Obviously, we're going to select yes, and we'd go ahead and go through that process. Now, again, for the sake of example, I'm not going to push this because when we actually go into field here, it would cause a delay, and we'll actually just go ahead and work through it. So,
well, let's take a look at what this looks like when you come into field.
Yeah.
How you can differentiate the equipment sets or the selection sets from both Navis and Glue.
yeah, absolutely, right? So here I'm in BIM 360 Glue, just in the web-based version, just in Google Chrome.
I think that's field.
Field, sorry, thank you. Yep, absolutely is field. But nonetheless, basically, again, just logged in. This is the same project that is associated to my Glue account. So we obviously just went through the process of sharing it. Let's take a look at how that works. First and foremost, I need to be in as project admin to go ahead and set up this equipment. So it's just going to refresh the page and get me into admin mode in BIM 360 field. Got it right this time. So we'll go down to the equipment tab in the admin mode. And when I load this up, I'm going to see that I already have a couple models that have been shared here. And actually the one that we were just in, this field integration test, I actually set this up yesterday and already had uploaded it up.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, to upload a model though, at its base point, you see at the top left of the screen under models, add model from BIM 360 Glue. When I select this, it basically keys me to select the account and the actual project that I'm trying to reference. So here I can see this ADSK construction. That Science Med Center is actually that Glue project that we were just in.
So it sounds like that's very important. It's sharing it within Glue and then pulling it when you're in field. Mm-hmm. And that's the connection. I feel that might be where a lot of the headaches might come from, just not understanding and not knowing what that entire workflow is.
Absolutely.
Can we take a look at the actual mapping?
Yeah, absolutely. So in theory, right, if I had just pushed this integration test, it would be showing up in this interface. I could just simply select, it would pull up. But nonetheless, like we said, we already brought this in. So let's go ahead and take a look at the equipment mapping. And to do that, just manage equipment mapping. And here I can see right off the bat, right, all the equipment sets that I've already pushed. And actually, since I did recently share that set with Field, from Glue, that new piece of equipment is now being shown. See that it's that new model element. Right off the bat, I can see also the difference in search sets that I've created in Navisworks versus the actual equipment set that I created in Glue. So it does provide that level of delineation between the two types of data, or the data sources for that matter.
Well, that's fantastic. So what we'll do in our next episode is we're gonna dive a little bit further, and we're gonna talk about what you can do with these equipment sets and how it makes sense within your field project. We'll go through on mapping and showing it how when information changes, how it gets pushed up, because really the ID number of that object will always stay that ID number.
Sure, absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah, we'll actually walk through the whole step throughout BIM 360 Field of mapping that equipment, and then actually how to leverage that back in Navisworks as well.
Fantastic.
So that's kind of the next step of this.
Well, thanks for watching us, and we'll see you next.